Chair of India Smart Grid Forum Working Group on Digital Architecture and Cyber Security, and he is also the Professor and Dean of Research and Development with VJTI Mumbai. We have Mr. Aniruddha Kumar, Director NCIIPC with us. Warm welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. And with that initial introduction, I'd like to hand over the stage to Sri Murugesan. Please, sir. Yeah, unfortunately, Mr. M.A.K.P. Singh had to decline at the last minute. So over to you, sir.
Good evening, friends. It is my pleasure to chair this particular session on security, which is very important as in the smart grid or any of the automation projects, we see that everything is done properly. We just leave that security aspect neglected, thinking that things will be ordered or it will not be affecting. But repeatedly, world over, it keeps on telling that this is very important area, that the grid can be brought down. So friends, as a smart grid gives lots of benefits to the system, to the user, start with home automation or metering automation, or you call about advanced metering infrastructure or substation automation or distribution automation, SCADA, or now the electric vehicle or connecting renewable energy. Previously, all the systems were totally tightly coupled, so there was no scope for anyone to intervene. Now with this advantage, taking advantage is smart grid aspect to make use of the energy efficiently, we have to open everywhere. So friends, you can see that the security starts from home automation, metering, substation automation, feeder automation, SCADA, distribution automation. Now we have opened at the road itself in the form of a charger. So chargers is accessible. RME is accessible. So everything is accessible. So you have kept way for compromising the security. Of course. Especially when we talk about today's electric vehicle, it is the integral part of your green energy and efficient means of transportation. But as I mentioned that there are vulnerabilities when you have all the machines outside and when you connect it to your vehicle to the charging infrastructure or charger, again you have come to this compromising the security of the system. There comes a third party, applications, all such things. Recently last year, a 19-year-old boy, he could able to bring down 21 chargers throughout the world of Tesla. He demonstrated that he can able to play with that. So it is real. So we can't say that it is, we can just like that ignore it. It is a real thing. And in fact, USA has invested more than $5 billion US only for this. So it can happen. So that is the importance of that. But friends, as he mentioned it, the interoperability, the standards, all these things, wherever you have the electronic component, whether you talk about meter, RTU, RMU, or you, whatever you talk about it, the interoperability comes into picture and the standards comes into picture. So standardized way of procuring and installing the charger is very important because We are installing one charger here, so tomorrow you have to replace it with somebody else. So the interoperability, all such thing comes into picture, including your apps. Otherwise, again, it will go into this mode. So in my paper, I mentioned about the standard governing this whole EV ecosystem. It is a brief, but the things are available. Now Indian standards are available fair enough, adopting the IEC standard. In that particular one, we need to approach the three standards, ISO, IEC. The standards like ISO, IEC 15118, and of course, that when we connect your network to the system, it follows 61850, then that particular to take care of that particular standard, we need to adopt 62351. Then of course, the upper layer is ISO, IEC 27000 series. So with that, so we need to insist, I have not seen it in the specification or anything like that, putting these particular specific standards, and there are test systems we need to establish to test your charger for vulnerability. That we need to demand. So with that, I hand over the things to Professor Faruk Kazi for his work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So when I was given this topic, I was feeling guilty because today itself we inaugurated EV Expo, and suddenly we start talking about how the attack can happen on this EV charging infrastructure. But the intention is not to create a fear psychosis, but when we are creating this infrastructure for the next generation, keeping 20, 30 years of timeline, the idea of this particular discussion or deliberation in this panel here is, how can we ensure security by design? So right at the beginning itself, when we are rolling out our EV plans, if we can have that at our back of mind, and when we come up with the infrastructure, all those possibilities can be then taken care of. So that is the intention with which at least I will be discussing, and the most of the panel members will also be discussing. Basically, what I view EV charging infrastructure is as a connecting bridge between two critical infrastructure. On one side, we have mobility or transportation. With this EV charging, it gets connected to energy network, which is one more critical infrastructure. So essentially, this EV charging infrastructure is, from cybersecurity point of view, definitely going to create some attack vectors on both the sides. Now, when we talk about energy network, we have seen a lot of cyber attacks in the recent past. Around 1 decade or so, we started seeing this kind of cyber attacks, primarily from the Stuxnet, which happened on Iranian nuclear power plant. Subsequently, in 2015 or 16, there were cyber attacks which were happening on Ukrainian power grid as such. And I'm sure many of you who follow this energy domain closely, you must have heard about certain media coverage about last year's Mumbai grid failure, which happened on the 12th of October 2020, when Wall Street Journal or Recorded Future started mentioning involvement of some nation-state actors responsible for bringing that grid down. How much truth it had is a matter of investigation, and many committees have done that particular aspect. But one thing is very much clear, that these infrastructures are as vulnerable and on the agenda of the hackers or attacker as banking and finance sector as used to happen earlier. So the question that we would like to answer or address is that will EV charging infra will also have vulnerabilities from cybersecurity point of view, and what kind of care we can take right at the beginning, rather than subsequently realizing the loopholes and trying to retrofit it when the things go out of our control. So now today what we are discussing mainly is about vehicle to grid or V2G type of interaction when we talk about EV infrastructure. Maybe in a couple of years or so, we would also be discussing on some kind of similar platform about vehicle-to-vehicle communication as well, or V2V communication as well. So when we are creating this kind of infrastructure, I believe that we should have enough thought process going in our mind, in our planning, while rolling out in a big scale for this EV infrastructure basically. So from cyber security point of view, there are a couple of vulnerabilities which do exist in EV charging infrastructure as well. Particularly when we borrow the metaphor of IC-based electrical vehicle, IC-based automobile, where we used to have petrol or diesel filled in some kind of pumping station, we never used to have communication with the vehicle. However, in case of electrical charging, there will be two components into this communication. One will be electrical vehicle communicating with the charging point, and then charging point communicating with its backend. So in the presentation of Reggie sir, he mentioned about certain standards. So communication between electrical vehicle to the charging point, more or less, is now being agreed upon, including in India, about adopting ISO 15118 standard. Whereas from charging point to the back end, people are in wider consultation are having some kind of more connect with OCPP protocol, the Open Charge Point Protocol. So considering these two main protocols, which will be playing very crucial role in case of electrical vehicle charging infrastructure, we need to see are there any vulnerabilities from cybersecurity point of view. Now, when you look at this ISO 15118 protocol, it mandates certain requirements from cybersecurity point of view, and few are left optional. Now, although at today's time, those optional may still serve better, but maybe a couple of years down the line, there will be some kind of vulnerabilities reported, and people will try to mandate that as well. So let me list it down, couple of those technicalities as well, so that those who are here, policymaker, can make note of that. For ISO 15118 standard, when you connect your vehicle to the charging point, there's some handshake which has to happen between these two. And that handshake has to happen with some kind of session which gets created from something called as the TLS, or Transport Layer Security. Now, what this 15118 mandates is to go for version 1.2 for the TLS. And there are a couple of vulnerabilities which are getting reported into that. So one of the way by which we can try to make our system secure by design right at the beginning, right at the rollout itself, is to see that we are going for version 1.3, which is currently available, and be ready and flexible to upgrade as and when new versions comes in picture. Why it is important is when the TLS first time had the heartbleed vulnerability, suddenly people got into action and started looking at some kind of solution. So we expect when we are having a large scale rollout for EV charging infrastructure, we should not land up in the same type of situation that subsequently we start running ahead and finding out some ways to patch those vulnerabilities. So that is one sincere request that I can have. One more request that I can be having here is, there are different type of attacks which happen, including the expected possibilities for EV charging. One is when we are having the stealing of identity, or sometimes people also call this as a repudiation or non-repudiation as well. These are some of those vulnerabilities which are by hackers, script kiddies. But then there are recent cyber attacks wherein nation-state involvement is also being identified, certain APT groups which are identified who are trying to attack on the energy network. So probably going forward, when the full-scale rollout happens and we start getting many such deployment of EV infrastructure, we might also see that this become potential target of nation-state actors as well. So what I would be recommending at the very beginning is, let us have security by design type of approach, where while planning for EV infrastructure, we take care of cybersecurity issues as well. So these are my initial remarks, and I close my discussion here at this point of time.
So good afternoon to everybody. Myself, Aniruddha Kumar. You must have heard the name of NCIIPC. So let me tell you the mandate of NCIIPC and what is the NCIIPC. NCIIPC is the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center. It is a public body. The mandate of NCIIPC is to protect the National Critical Information Infrastructure. It is a national nodal agency for the protection of the CII. So recently, it has been created 8 years back. In NCIIPC, we are having 6 different critical sectors so that we can protect them better. So for the protection of the CII, we need to identify the CII first. So as of now, we are identifying the CII, and the CII can be declared as the protected system using the Gazette notification. Then we are formulating the policies, we are providing the incident response, and other things. We are also sharing the regular alerts, TV alerts, and also the inventory specific advisory to the stakeholders. So there are 6 major critical sectors in this NCIIPC. Those are power and energy, banking, financial services and insurance, transport sector, government sector, static public enterprises. So now, so the agenda of today's presentation is the EV charging ecosystem. What is the EV charging ecosystem? The protocols used in this ecosystem, and how the charging ecosystem is working. What can be targeted and what damage can be made during the attack. Then the recent technology called vehicle to grid technology. So I will discuss some 2-3 slides about this. Then the initiatives taken by the government of India towards this promoting this EV charging infrastructure, and some best way to handle the cyber threats. So now about the background. So actually, you must have heard the Tesla event some years back, in which the smart cars were compromised. Why? Because those cars were connected to the internet. So that is not the point of concern, but we are adopting the same kind of technology here in this EV charging infrastructure, because this infrastructure is already connected to the internet. So the quick evolution of this EV technology and the rapid adoption of this EV technology, we have increased the attack surface for the attackers. So, and this is also connected to the internet. So the cause of concern is the connectivity of this infrastructure with the internet for the billing purposes, for the metering purposes, and for the roaming purposes. Now, attack on this EVCS can have real-time implications like drivers and car manufacturers could be negatively affected. The second one is weak code. Weak code used in the charging station can expose the credit card details and driver and owners. A compromised EVCS could potentially reverse electricity back to the grid. Suppose if the communication is compromised and the EV as well as the EVS is compromised, anything can happen. The EV can withdraw the electricity more than the desired one, and it can supply the city back to the grid. So this, as automotive cybersecurity is still a relatively new domain, the increasing number of cyber incidents are inevitable. Because what is connected to the internet, it is already vulnerable. There are some residual risks which cannot be prevented. So the connectivity itself is a challenge for us. So knowing the EV charging ecosystem is very important for all stakeholders to contribute towards building a reliable infrastructure through the adoption of technology and best practices. Next. This is the EV charging ecosystem. So what are the stakeholders in this EV charging ecosystem? The vehicle owner, or we can say the driver of the vehicle itself, and the electric vehicle supply equipment. We can say that electric vehicle charging station. So it is basically a charging point. It is called the EVSC or EVCS. The control system of the charging point station, because the control system is communicating with the control system of the EV, and it is deciding that the required power to be given to the battery. It is identifying, it is establishing the communication between the EV and the EVCS. It is identifying the manufacturer of the EV, identifying the voltage and the current required to be given to the battery of the EV. The EV e-roaming platform. The roaming platform is also plays a vital role in the EV infrastructure. Why? Because across the country, the services of the charging cannot be provided by a single CPO, charging point operator, or the charging station operator. So there may be variety of CPOs or CSOs. That's why we need an EV roaming platform in order to metering and billing. And there are some utilities for this ecosystem. Those are the e-mobility service provider. E-mobility service provider is nothing but an organization or an entity which is responsible for establishing this charging station network. The OEM of the EV, charging point operator. So under a single EMSP, there may be multiple CPOs or CSOs and distribution companies, or we can say the BESCOM. The BESCOM is called the distribution system operator. So basically, this is a diagram. The red, this green dotted lines, they are displaying about the information flow. What? And these blue lines, blue dotted lines, they are displaying the flow of the electricity. Next. So there are certain protocols used for the communication used in the EV charging ecosystem. Basically, there are two types of communication happened in this infrastructure. First one is the front-end communication. So in front-end communication, this communication happens between the controller of the EV and the controller of the charging station. So there are certain protocols used in that particular communication. Those are ISO 15118, as Mr. Kazi has already discussed. And another one protocol is the CHA demo protocol. And in India, the BIS has developed one more standard. It is called 17017. The backend protocols emphasizing the communication and the cyber security requirements define the link between charge point and a third-party operator. So as you are seeing, the linkage between the VEV and the electric supply equipment. So there is a red link there. So red link means it is the front-end communication. And the VEV supply equipment is nothing but a charging station. It is having three interfaces. The front-end interface, which is interacting with this vehicle. The second interface, which is we can call the internal. The charge point operator, aggregator, and the energy supplier. So some of the backend protocols are OCPP, IEC 63110, OCPI, EE-bus, and IEEE 2030.5. So those are some of the protocols used in the backend communication. While in the front-end communication, we are using the CHA demo and ISO 15118. Next. So how the charging process works? So basically, whenever we are connecting this charging point, vehicle with the charging point, first of all, the initial handshake happens. So during the handshake, the EV is identifying the EV charger, or we can say the charging station or the charging operator, and the charging point, charging operator is identifying the EV. Not only the EV, the power of the battery, the voltage of the battery, the current required to for the charging purposes. So this kind of data is being shared after making the initial handshake with this charge point charging station. So there are two types of charging, the conductive and the inductive. So in India, basically now we are using the conductive or the wire charging. It is the mainstream charging technology in use. Requirement of this EVSE for conductive charging depend on multiple factors such as vehicle type, battery, as I told, battery capacity, charging method, and power rating. EV charging requirements depend on the specification of the EV. So this kind of information is being shared whenever we are connecting the vehicle with the charging station. Next. So now what can be targeted? For conducting or launching a successful cyber attack, there are four major points. Those can be targeted. However, all these stakeholders which are participating in this EV charging ecosystem, they can be targeted. But primarily, we can say that the communication between any two nodes in the charging ecosystem, those can be targeted. So the communication, we can say the front-end communication, or most probably the back-end communication, which is taking place between the EVSE and the energy management system, and EVSE and the third-party operators. The communication can be tapped or the intercepted, or we can say eavesdropping can be happened in those those communications. So what will happen after the compromise of those communication? That I'll discuss in the next slide. Again, the attacker can also target the mobile apps. So mobile apps are being used by the car owner or the car driver. Similarly, at the back end, the mobile platform, they are being utilized for the establishing the communication between the EVSE and the its control center, between the EVSE and the EMS. Third one is the firmware updates and the patches. So while installing the firmware and updates for the mobile apps and for the softwares used in this ecosystem, those updates can be targeted. Means any false update or any malicious update can be installed. Later on, it can compromise the software and the whole ecosystem. Similarly, we are using here the hello. So in this ecosystem, we are using the roaming platforms. Those roaming platforms can also be targeted. So any kind of software which is being utilized for supporting this ecosystem, whether it is the EMS, means energy management system, or the roaming platform, or the controller of the this EV, or the controller of the charging point station, anything can be targeted during the process of the update and patching. Similarly, the physical access points. The access points we can or the attacker can target all those nodes which are there in this ecosystem. Attacker can also target this physically target this controlling controlling system of the EVSE. It can also, he or she can also target this remote roaming platform and the energy management system. So this is how the attacker can infiltrate in the network or infiltrate into the various systems or the various components used in this charging ecosystem. Now, next. What will happen if attacker is able to tap the traffic or can get the access of the system? So while the attacker is, suppose he is able to get the traffic of the communication happening between two nodes in the charging ecosystem, he or she can steal the identity of the individual. He can tamper the data, unlawful access privilege can also be happened. During the process of the attack, the attacker can also insert the malware in the EMS, EVSE, or in the roaming platform. He or she can also steal the private and sensitive information by tapping the communications. And the electrical flow can also be manipulated. Why? Because he is having the information flowing between the various nodes. Suppose the EV is interacting with the EVSE at the initial stage of the handshake. The attacker can falsely place some wrong information so that the EVSE can wrongly identify the battery information. In this way, the electrical flow can be manipulated, and suppose the vehicle is desired to have some kind of electricity from the EVSE, it can get less power or it can get more power than the desired one. The denial of service can also be, DOS attack can also be happened, and ransomware attacks may also happen by compromising this EVSE. Suppose the EVSE is already compromised and the EV is trying to charge using the EVSE. So during the initial handshake, it will establish the connection, and after the establishment of the connection, it can insert the malware from the EVSE to the controller of the EV. Similarly, the malware can propagate vice versa, means it can propagate from the compromised EV to charging station, and later on it can be propagated to the energy management system and the roaming platform as well. So this is how the attacker can target the whole infrastructure. It can also propagate to the smart meter and later on the to the BESCOMs. So this is how the attacker can destabilize the grid. Furthermore, security flaws or vulnerabilities in EVSE allow large-scale cyber attacks, as I have mentioned, to be launched, affecting the power grid security. As a result, not just the EV mobility, but also the energy grid itself would be jeopardized. Suppose some particular EV is compromised, and user want to charge its EV, and during the connection between the EV and EVSE, the malware can be propagated from the EV to EVSE. So later on, this can hack all the infrastructure, and suppose the charging point operator, or we can say the e-mobility operator, he can come to know that the particular EV is infected and it has compromised our network. He or the operator can block the this EV. The OEM of EV or all the EVs of particular OEM or particular owner of the OEM. So there may be n number of possibilities. Means the charging point operator, or we can say the e-mobility operator, can block all the vehicles of a particular OEM or a particular vehicle of an OEM owned by some particular person. So this is how he or she can be denied by for providing the services of the charging. In this way, the owner will not get the charging from the charging point operator, or the cars of particular OEM, all the cars of the OEM, they will not be allowed to charge using the charging point operator. So the user may also be blacklisted by the CPOs. So these are the certain possibilities. Those can be happened by attacking the charging ecosystem. So because of the high dangers, complexity, and rapid growth of connected devices that we are experiencing today, cybersecurity for EVSE is a key necessity. Setting a minimal degree of security can help prevent a charging point from malfunctioning and posing a security and safety risk to users, charging point operators, and distribution system operators, service operators. So now, vehicle to grid is a technology which is an advanced technology used in the charging ecosystem. Before this, there may be a number of technology. We can say the vehicle to house or vehicle to building. While this V2G is the advanced one, so how it is different from the other technologies? In this technology, the vehicle can supply the power to the grid. while the vehicle is standing idle at your home or at your office premises, the battery can be utilized to supply the power to the grid. Similarly, if the charging point operator it is having some kind of solar panels, so the energy can be stored and later on it can be fed to the grid. And similarly, if there are n number of vehicles, the batteries of those n number of vehicles, they can be utilized as the virtual power player. So while they are lying idle at some place, the energy from those batteries can be fed to the grid. So this V2G technology allows the both way transportation of the power, means grid to vehicle and vehicle to grid. And in the vehicle to I can say vehicle to building or vehicle to home, we can supply the power of the battery to the building, some particular building or our home. So this is how we can utilize the energy of the battery of the vehicle for internal use at the home. So vehicle to home and vehicle to building, those kind of technologies can supply the power from batteries to the batteries of the vehicles to the some particular building or your home. So this V2G is more advanced, in which the electrical supply flows from battery to the grid, while in other technologies the power supply is flowing one way, means from grid to vehicle only. So let me discuss briefly about this V2G. A modern electric vehicle requires a fast charging infrastructure, which is possible through power line communication. It can fully charge vehicle battery very quickly, having IP stack on top of it to carry power packs and to make payments automatically. So in this technology, the power means the payment of the charging is made automatically. This will allow vehicle to communicate with external world. Means if you can consider a scenario in which the car is completely connected with the grid, and you can say the OEM of the car is connected with the driver, with the owner of the vehicle. It is also connected with the charging point operators or we can say the e-mobility operators. So whenever you will visualize the complete picture, it will make a circle. The circle will be complete because EV is connected to EVSE while it is charging. In the backend, EVSE is connected to energy management system as well as with the third-party providers like the BESCOM for billing and metering, and the roaming platforms for providing the roaming services while traveling from one place to another place, and for making the payment by the owner of the car. The backend of the EVS is connected to the internet. So this way the whole circle gets completed. So this supposedly poses several cyber security threats to the vehicle. Some possible threats including impersonation, stealing payment related information, because in this technology automatic payment is being made. So if the network or the systems involving in this ecosystem are compromised, this payment information or the credit card information can be stolen. Hence, V2G implementation should have well-planned cybersecurity measures in place to achieve confidentiality, integrity, and availability, along with identity, authentication, authorization, and accountability. Back. Sir, I am just service remote. So this V2G technology, why I am discussing this, because this is utilizing this standard called ISO 15118. And why it is important, this technology is using the PKI, public key infrastructure, in which the digital certificates are being utilized. And why these digital certificates are important? those are important. Why? Because the EV is identifying the EVSE and EVSE is identifying the EV. And it is ensuring that the integrity of the information is intact. So this is why this V2G or the ISO 15118 is very important. Now applicability of this ISO 15118. Next. So as I have already discussed that this ISO 15118 is applicable for the front end communication only. The communication happening between the electrical vehicle and the charge point. While you are looking at this dotted arrow of blue color, it is for the data sets. But for the backend communication, this protocol or this standard is not being utilized. So this is the scope of this ISO 15118. While in India we are using this IS 17017. Next. So these are some cyber security measures in V2G. Encryption and decryption of messages to ensure adversary is not able to eavesdrop on the channel to ensure confidentiality. So we are using this protocol or the standard called 15118. This is ensuring very good encryption between the EV and EVSE. So attacker will not be able to eavesdrop the network. It is also ensuring the integrity of the information exchange. And as I told, this standard is also identifying EVSE is identifying the EV and vice versa. So these three measures are being taken by this standard. Next. So now these are some initiatives taken by Government of India for this EV charging infrastructure. The EV charging infrastructure guidelines and standards for public charging infrastructure were initially drafted in 2018. Later on, they were amended in 2019 and 2020. Recently, Ministry of Power has amended them again, and those were released on 14th Jan 2023. IS 1017 is the key EV charging standard in India. It was developed by BIS. It is having a certain section. So due to the technical requirement of digital communications between the DC charging EVSE and the EV, data communication standards are specified in IS 17017 part 24. When the combined charging system, because in India there is, we are not having any combined charging system for DC charging as well as for the AC charging. So whenever this system will be deployed in India, which can provide both the AC and DC charging, communication will be as per the IS 15118. So as of now, we are not fully utilizing this IS 15118. We are partially utilizing this standard, and we are only utilizing this IS 17017. Next. So now, how we can handle the cyber threats? So basically, we need to have some public infrastructure for protecting the various communication happened between two nodes in the charging ecosystem. So this PKI will enable the encrypt and decrypt the communication traffic. The verification of the integrity will be ensured by the deployment of this PKI. And the communication parties can identify each other using this PKI infrastructure. Or we can have basically the OEM and the charging point operators, they can have the certifying authorities, CAs, or they can have the sub-CAs, so that the EV can identify the EVSE and vice versa. So as we know that this infrastructure is already connected to the internet, it is vulnerable to the cyber attacks. And it is inevitable, the attacks are inevitable. Cyber security for EV charging ecosystem is a critical need due to the high risk, complexity, and quick evolution of the EVs. Unfortunately, traditional automotive safety guidelines, regulations, standards do not sufficiently cover the cyber threats. related to the modern day connected vehicles. So all the stakeholders participating in this EV ecosystem, they need to follow global acknowledged best practices or standards. They need to carry regular or the periodic vulnerability assessment and penetration testing of the ICT infrastructure used in this charging ecosystem. Need to update and patch the vulnerabilities and all the systems. They need to have the patch management system in place to consistently monitor the infra. The network and systems need to be monitored regularly. Monitoring shall focus on the following interfaces. Means the interface, the controller interface of the vehicle. It can be monitored by the owner of or the driver of the vehicle. Similarly, the charging point station, it is having 3 or more interfaces. So all of them can be monitored regularly. The interface which is participating with the EV is called the front-end interface. It can also be monitored. The back-end interface used for the communication with the EMS, it can be also monitored regularly. And the management console or the management interface can also be monitored regularly for identifying any malicious traffic. And we need to follow the government regulations as well. Thank you.
Hello.
So the main important thing is that wherever we specify any electronic equipment, the fundamental is that the basic thing, then we build up these standards. So friends, we should be aware of what are the security standards available for this particular infrastructure and the implication. It's not that now we talked about only electric vehicle to EVSE, but again between EVSE and back into grid, that is important that we have mentioned about the 2 standards, the 62351 and which is concerning the electrical network, things like that. And of course, the supervision overall is that ISO IEC 27000 series. So that just with one hour class, you may not understand it, but at least you should understand the standard number. That will give a lot of credibility. Then, of course, we need to test the equipment. That is where we lack it. Whether we talk about meter or RTU or something, we always found it difficult that we set up, finding difficult to test the equipment. So this also have to go for testing. That we normally, no one has set up the facility in India, so that also we need to take care. So with that, I just for 1 or 2 questions, I will open the floor for questions. Otherwise, we are already overrun that session. Any questions? So friends, security is a very important aspect. Of course, we are taken care of in this meter or RTU or SCADA, all such things to some extent. So here also we need to take care. That is a message. And there are some standards are available and we need to go further to have a set up even testing facility for so many things. Within maybe 1 hour or half an hour, we may not go into the how the attack happens, what are the things they will take it out, how do you do that? It may not be possible, but that is a scary that already it has happened. It is not that the attack has not already. I told that a 19-year boy can able to crack, this Tesla charger, 21 places all over the world. So this real. So we need to be prepared for that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ISGF, for giving us an opportunity. Sorry. Of course, I'm sorry. BESCOM and ISGF, in fact, I could able to write the quickest paper in my life. Thank you very much. Huh? Yeah. Kindly join for a group picture.